Hi, Next Gen Leads. My name is Roberta Domingues. I am a Brazilian and I just finished my master in strategic leadership towards sustainability. And today I'm super excited. I'm here with Joanna Barclay. She's the CEO of the Culture Leadership Group. Thank you, Joanna, so much for your contribution. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your work, any interesting activity that you are involved with?
Yeah, thank you, Roberta. Well, I am CEO of the Culture Leadership Group. It's a company that I formed a few years ago when I moved over to Singapore. I'm a global speaker and leadership consultant on conscious culture, well, how to build a high-performing workplace culture, and conscious leadership. So what I do is I work with leadership teams. I've worked with leadership teams my entire professional career. I first started in the IT business for about 15 years. And then the last 20 years, it's been as a professional facilitator. So I work with leadership teams who are going through transformation. Typically it's business transformation. And the last 10 years, it's been around culture transformation, really focusing on workplace culture and helping leaders understand, okay, what is their workplace culture? What are the important values of their people that's going to inspire and motivate them to be fully engaged, but also to understand what's currently happening within the organization, what's working and what's not working, and then what's the desired workplace culture. So that's from a consulting perspective. The speaking that I do is the last few online keynotes that I've done have been around resilience. You know, how do you build a high-performing workplace culture with resilience and connectivity, which really speaks to, I guess, most of my values as a professional facilitator. Because when it comes to supporting the transformation within individuals, but also within teams and organization as a whole, it's really up to the, I guess I call it facilitative leadership. How do you enable people? How do you create a safe environment within an organization to enable people to open up and share and engage and, you know, work together collaboratively with transparency and trust, shared vision and shared values. So that's really what inspires me. I love seeing people reach their full potential. And because I'm a professional facilitator, I love giving people a voice in the process of change. So instead of feeling like change is being done to you, I love to give people a voice and enabling them to be part of the change process right from the very beginning all the way through. So that's kind of what I do.
Nice. And I know you have a very interesting personal story to share with us about values. And I
Yeah.
would like to hear of you. Yeah.
Okay, well, it started back in 2012 when my daughter, who was living in Singapore, had her first child. And she really wanted to have parents in her family's life, because the one thing that expats miss is family. So she started working on my husband and I to try to get us over to Singapore. And what that meant was for me to move my business. And I said yes immediately because I just love traveling. And I also wanted to make a difference. And family means a lot to me. And to have my daughter, you know, ask me to be part of her life meant a lot, because she moved out when she was very young as a model. She traveled the world. And so for 15 years, I only saw her about a week a year. So what did that mean for me to move my business to Singapore? Well, I put it out into my network. Does anybody know anybody who does what I do in Southeast Asia? And somebody in my network sent it to their network. And sure enough, somebody responded and said, you know, I've been a global speaker doing motivational talks and leadership consultant. I'd be glad to help you. Well, where did this fellow live? He lived across the river from me. So I hopped in my kayak, paddled across the river. And the first thing he said to me, he says, Joanna, you need to write a book. If you want to move your business to Singapore, you'll need to write a book. Well, me write a book? No way. I mean, I got straight D's in English all the way through high school. I mean, PowerPoint and me were good friends, right? So what did it mean to be able to do something like that, but also to move your whole life from one place to the other side of the world? And so there were two values that really enabled me to do this. One was wanting to make a difference. And the second was family. And I know that sounds strange, but what I discovered in this work is that values are a source of life force energy. They're the language of the heart, right? And whenever you think about your values, they actually energize you and they pick you up and they give you energy. So whenever I thought I couldn't do it, I would think about these two values. But also I had been doing a lot of breathing practices and a lot of yoga and a lot of meditation. And I guess I think my vibrational level was at a point where I was confident. You know, instead of letting the fears of not having enough money or not having the right relationships or not being good enough, I didn't let those fears reduce my capabilities. I believed in myself. I had the confidence, but I also had the courage, right? I had the courage to make a move like this. Most people well, actually, everybody but two people in our family and all of our friends, they actually thought we were crazy. You're going to do what? You're going to move, you're going to sell this big, beautiful house you've just built, and you're going to give away half of your stuff and move to the other side of the world. Like, who does that a few years from retirement? Like, not many people. In fact, only two people thought we weren't crazy. There was a friend of my husband's at work, and the second was my optometrist. He had vision. Right? So, you know, on a daily basis, I had to confront my fears in terms of, okay, where would we live? How would I provide an income? Because I needed to make new relationships with CEOs and HR managers. How would we take care of our health? You know, what would happen to our family and our boys back at home that we were leaving here? So there were a lot of fears that I had to address on a daily basis. And when it comes to actually, you know, pushing through and doing things that you never thought possible, I think it's really important to recognize, you know, those values that are really important to you and building on them. So for me, the writing a book, which I did, by the way, Conscious Culture, it got written. It actually happened fairly quickly. Once I had decided that I was going to do it, I sat down, and in 4 months' time, you know, the rough draft had all been done. So you know, on a daily basis, you've got to connect in here and recognize what's important and how you're going to do it. I had these breathing practices, like I said, in the meditation. So that would certainly help give me a lot of energy. I focused on building relationships. So I started actually in 2012. I actually started going over to Singapore to develop those relationships. And then, you know, anything that I needed to develop in myself, I started working on here inside, and that enabled me to, you know, to do the work that needed to get done, because you can't just kind of sit there and go, well, who's going to do it for you? You have to take responsibility. You have to take ownership. But certainly the resilience, you know, recognizing when I was low, what I needed to do to pick myself up, and that's what happened. There is also about accepting the situation. You know, sometimes you are in a difficult place. How are you going to move forward? And I think accepting the challenges that we had helped me see it not as a challenge, but as an adventure. So sometimes it's your perspective on what you're seeing that can also make a difference to, I guess, your energy. So that's really how we did it. It was, not letting any of the fears reduce me, and then having the courage, having the confidence, having a vision, um, creating a shared vision with my husband as well, and the values that were important to us. So the value of family both meant a huge amount to us, and then wanting to make a difference. So that's what I would say is what really my personal story of being able to move over to Singapore. And then once we were there, I just started building relationships. You know, for me, that was huge. That's always kind of been my way of leading, but also the work that I do is it's through. So I did the speaking. People in Singapore were incredibly helpful, and especially within the expat community, they looked after one another. And I got speaking gigs just from people wanting to support me, and giving one talk here led to another talk here, led to another talk here. And within 5 years that we were there, we had developed the business, and then it was time to come home the year before COVID. So again, listening to my inner voice, I knew last year in June was time to come home, and that's when we did. And So it was an incredible adventure. I mean, when I think about the 5 years that we had in Asia, it was incredible. You know, it was really, we learned so much, and I think I made a difference in terms of the number of leaders that I spoke to and the work that I did. And not only that, I met the beautiful Roberta Domingues. So there you go. That was my story.
Nice. And now also with the situation, with all that we are going through with COVID, and do you have a value that is also supporting you in this?
Definitely continuous learning. For me, it's a big value. You know, when COVID happened, I had wanted to start doing the conscious leadership with horses workshops, but that wasn't possible because the stables were closed down. But I had bought a horse and I wanted to renew my horsemanship skills, and so that's what I did. I've been taking online courses and going every day to the barn. So my mental health has been kept in very good working order. Um, yeah, so yeah, I think it's so important as an individual to understand who you are. You know, what are the values that make you tick? And the cultural values assessments that I've been using for 10 years from the Barrett Value Center, they have a free personal values assessment that you can take. And that values assessment really kind of gives you a good idea of who you are. You know, what are those values that are going to inspire you and motivate you? But also, if those values are being stepped on, then you'll know why why you are disengaging, or why you're going into conflict with somebody, or why you're not able to perform at your highest. So, for me, understanding what are the values that make you tick, that are most important to you, is huge. There's this book that I read called The Tao of Leadership. And it's actually the first chapter in my book, The ABCs of High Performance. And there's a saying in there, all power and effectiveness come from knowing the how and acting appropriately. So, I asked people, I said, okay, knowing the how and acting appropriately, what that means is, do you know what the right thing is? And are you doing it? And if I ask people, okay, if you know what the right thing is, how many people do the right thing 100% of the time? How many people can raise their hand and say they do the right thing 100% of the time? Okay, how about 80% of the time? You know what the right thing is and you do it. Most people in the talks I give, they say about 60% of the time they do the right thing. They know what it is and they do the right thing. Now, so if you as a human being do the right thing about 60% of the time, what are you doing the other 40% of the time? Now, take that into a work situation. We're all human beings. We're at work. 60% of the time, we're doing the right thing. So what are you doing the other 40% of the time?
Yeah.
Right? This relates to when I moved over to Singapore with my husband. We started working together, side by side, working and living. And one day he said to me, he said, Joanna, you treat your clients better than you treat me. Like that was like a knife here, right? And what that meant to me was, it wasn't okay for me to lose my stuff when things weren't going well. I needed to treat him with the same level of respect as when I first met him. Because unfortunately, what can happen over time is the relationships closest to us, we take them for granted, or we don't treat them with the respect that they deserve. So if you want to develop yourself as a conscious leader, even if it's just self-leadership, pick a value, maybe every couple of months, that you want to focus on, and what are the behaviors associated with that value. So now, my husband and I are still working together here back in Canada, but patience is another value of mine that hasn't always been a value of mine. In fact, when I was 6 years old, I knew at that point in time that patience was a value that was something I was going to have to work on my entire life. So even now, when my husband says something that gets under my skin, I go, you know what, Joanna? Just count to 5. and see how you feel at 5. So I am still learning and growing in my own personal values. And you can do the same thing. Pick a personal value that you want to strengthen, focus on it. And whenever you have the opportunity to live into those behaviors that you associate with those values, that's how you can develop yourself, develop your own self-awareness. And as you develop, and become more self-aware of your own values, then you'll become more aware of the values around you and the people who you're living with or you're working with. And the more you are aware of their values, the more conscious you will be as a leader, and much more effective as well. Because people feel that energy if you pick it up from them, right? In terms of caring for them and showing attention and wanting to build that relationship. That's how my husband and I have built or sustained what I think is a very loving relationship now for 31 years.
Wow.
So it takes work, but when you pay attention to somebody, especially to the values that are important to them, they feel cared for, and their sense of self-worth will go up as you recognize their values and you show them that you care. That goes a long way. Goes a long way.
Thank you so much for your story. Very inspiring, and I can see the values everywhere in it. If you could tell us a key message, what that would be from your story?
A key message that I think is really helpful for people is to get to know yourself. Do the personal values assessment and know what are those values that inspire you and motivate you and give you energy, and then work on it. Work, if you're not able to live your values, why? Take a moment to reflect. At the end of the day, recognize, okay, what have I done today? Or what have I not done? What have I achieved or not achieved? And it's all about just kind of take the time to get to know yourself, because that will make you a far more effective person for your own self leadership, but then as well the impact that you have on the people around you. So I guess the message is get to know who you are. And the personal values assessment, if you need a link to go there, you can go to my website if you want, personalvaluesassessment.com. That will get you to the Barrett Values Center, where you can get your own report mailed to you in your email.
Yeah, that would be my next question about a practice that would indicate so people can learn this competence about your values. So
in the report that you get back in your email are 2 worksheets, and you can use those worksheets with yourself, with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues, your co-workers. It's a fabulous tool to get to know yourself, but also to get to know others, because they can do the free personal values assessment, and you sit down and you talk about your values. So many people are not self-aware of what are the values that make them tick, that really mean a lot to them and give them energy and motivate them to do the work that they do in life. Because our values are why we behave the way we do. They're why we feel the way we feel. All of our emotions are connected right in here to our heart center. The brain may say something, but it goes through here first before we act. And so, really understanding this part of ourselves is huge. And I like to think that great leaders lead from the heart, because they do.
thank you so much, Joanna, for our interview. And
it's been a real joy seeing you again, Roberta. I love you.
thank you.